So UFC Macau took place last night, and I thought that it was a pretty good card. I will be honest, I didn't watch all of it live, but I did manage to catch up on the fights that I did miss this morning. As I record this video, I actually fell asleep while waiting for Carlos Alvarez's fight to start, which is pretty unfortunate, but I did have a pretty long week at work, and then I had a sports tournament all day yesterday, so I was able to stay up to about 12:30 to try and watch the fights, and then I just fell asleep waiting for Olberg to walk out. So that was kind of a shame, but I did, of course, watch the rest of the fights this morning, and I am recording this fight the morning after the event, as the event took place 9 p.m. prelims for me, sorry, and then midnight, a main card is when it started. Overall, the card for my predictions wasn't a great night for me, but I did manage to avoid disaster. I went 9-4 on picks, and considering that it was a pretty hard card to predict, I don't think that was too bad of a result necessarily, but let's go down and just talk about the fights as they happened. Mora defeated Mahashate Hayasea. He just kind of seemed to be a little bit more of the aggressive fighter, seemed to have landed more damage. Mahashate definitely had his moments there, but for the most part, Mora, I did think that was closing the distance pretty well, despite him being pressured backwards for most of the fight. Mahashate just never really let it go, and every now and then, he would throw just something without setting it up at all. Like, he just wasn't fighting behind his jab. So, the Mora pick, I picked Mahashate, and the We Want Picks Lock of the Week did win with Mota, so that was pretty good by Jacob there. Xiaolong versus Guang Lei really shocked me. This fight did not go how I thought it was going to at all, because Xiaolong is not a striker. I don't consider him to be a striker. I really consider him to be a pure grappler, so maybe I'm going to need to adjust my expectations for how this guy is going to fight in the UFC, because Xiaolong, I think, only attempted one takedown against Guang Lei, and for the most part, Guang Lei started pretty hot. I thought that he started the first 4 minutes quite well, was really kind of showing that he was, I thought, showing that he was a bit of a better striker than Xiaolong, but he started to slow down, and that is a problem with Guang Lei, is he's a massive guy at this weight class, and I think that just throwing so much volume with so much power did add up a little bit over time, and Xiaolong was able to start to take over a bit, and he ended up getting that massive KO, which was kind of huge. But Xiaolong, I didn't know that he had it in him. I didn't know that he was like doing this all the time. He's just trying to ask to stand and bang. It was fun. It was a really fun fight. Xiaolong made it fun, and it's hilarious because I know that just looking at his topology doesn't tell the story, but this guy just doesn't really get KOs, and he is a grappler. You watch his fights on the road to UFC tournament last year, he's grappling with these guys, despite actually, to be fair, he did strike with Shuya Kamakubo a lot, but he just didn't really... I didn't expect that performance from him, I'll be honest. And then Lana Kavanagh defeated Jose Ochoa. Ochoa, as expected, did give Kavanagh a lot of problems, was pressuring forward a lot, was using his range quite well with that southpaw stance, with the shooter box style as well, was trying to get some moments going with the wrestling. At some moments actually had Lana Kavanagh hurt, and Lana Kavanagh actually resorted for a takedown at one point, and Ochoa ended up taking his back. But overall, I did think that Lana Kavanagh was the faster fighter, and he was closing the distance well and throwing pretty good combinations up and close. And I did think that he won the fight, and he did get the decision in this one. Hernandez versus Nyamjigao Tumindimbarel was a close decision. It's kind of funny because a lot of people think that Nyamjigao Tumindimbarel did more damage in the fight, but I don't. I think I need to maybe rewatch this one because I thought that Hernandez won. I liked the game plan from Hernandez a lot to wrestle Nyamjigao, but one thing I will say is I was very impressed with how good Nyamjigao's get-ups were. I know that Carlos Hernandez isn't the most high-level wrestler in the promotion, but Nyamjigao was not as lost on the ground at all compared to what I thought he was going to be. But he did kind of start to slow down towards the end of the fight. He's a massive flyweight for the weight class. I didn't actually realize how big he was for this weight class, and he did start to gas out a little bit in the second and third rounds. But Hernandez, for the most part, I think that we kind of did see a couple of weaknesses from him still. I thought that Nyamjigao was able to kind of split his guard a few times on the feet, and Hernandez, I didn't think that his top control was as strong as I thought it was going to be, and maybe that could present some issues for Hernandez in the future. But overall, Hernandez is kind of just a guy that has fought some really good fighters recently. The undefeated Tumen Dembarel fought him, and then he took on the undefeated Tatsuro Taira, the undefeated Rei Saruya. I mean, Taira was undefeated at the time. So yeah, kind of like a huge performance, I think, for Hernandez. But some people think that he lost the fight. I think it was close. I thought that Hernandez won, but I did pick Hernandez. Maybe I need to revisit it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Shiming did defeat Feng Shuaquan. This one was unbelievable. It actually might be one of the knockouts of the year because Feng Shuaquan was out cold for a very, very long time, and she was stretchered out of the arena. Was put into an ambulance. You do not see knockouts like this bad typically. You know, you like someone gets knocked out, they kind of come to a little bit. They can typically walk out on their own legs out of the arena. Feng Shuaquan was stretchered out. It was a pretty sad situation, but by the sounds of it, she is in pretty good care at the moment and is responding, so that is good to know. But the way that this fight happened was I did pick Feng Shuaquan, and I picked Feng Shuaquan with very high confidence as well. And I thought that she was winning the fight. I thought that she was looking pretty good. She was able to mostly just control the fight, but I did think that she was pretty sloppy. And Mingxi kind of did what I thought that she was going to do, and that was just be really scrappy on the feet. Her fight against Yade MCO was just kind of a brawl between two boxers, and Ximing was trying to do that to Feng Shuaquan. She was a lot smaller in there though, but she was closing the distance quite well and was just bombing away with the boxing. And eventually, she set up the head kick, and I believe a lot of people have been saying the replies to the highlights, saying that it was a read that she made, kind of just based off of how Feng Shuaquan was reacting to her body kicks and her leg kicks. At this point, I was pretty tired because, as I said, I worked a pretty long shift 2 days ago, and then yesterday had a pretty big day as well. So yeah, I was pretty tired, so I wasn't really able to pick up on the read myself in the moment. But yeah, pretty good win there for Ximing. And then Donghoon Shui, I picked Donghoon Shui to defeat Kiro Sahota. This was not really a common pick at all. I think a lot of people were on Kiro Sahota in this matchup. And I did think that Donghoon Shui was going to win. I just didn't think he was going to knock him out in the first round. Pretty huge for Shui. Quite enjoyed actually the win there for him. I think that this is a guy that does have some potential. I do worry a little bit just about the grappling because we haven't really seen him take on a high level grappler yet, but at 125 pounds we now have an undefeated guy from South Korea with pretty nice striking. I think that this guy's striking is really good, and he knocked out Sahota. Now Sahota, I think he'll be back. I would like to see him on road to UFC next year again if he can make the recovery in time, which I think he should be able to. Or maybe just have him win a couple more times and he can be on the Contender Series, or you just sign him straight up. I know that the UFC really does want to just in general sign a lot of fighters from Asia, and I know that Kiro Sahota, kind of like Lana Kavanagh, does live in Europe. He does have, I believe he's got a Bangladesh background, so maybe they could sign Sahota if he can get a couple of wins, because I think he is pretty good himself. You don't see someone that tall typically at flyweight at all. So yeah, pretty good win for Donghoon Shui. And then Su Young Yu, I did pick Su Young Yu to defeat Balging Geniusili. I butchered that one, but Su Young Yu, I was a little bit surprised. He landed a lot more damage on Geniusili than I expected, and kind of just like how Su Young Yu does fight, he does fight with a very, very kind of not really too much striking, but he does get takedowns relatively regularly, and then when he does get the takedowns, he just has really, really strong top control, and that's what he was able to do against Balging Gielisili. And Balging Gielisili, I didn't think that he had the best performance here. I thought that, considering a lot of people picked Balging to win this matchup, and the fact that I thought that he was the better striker, it was a little bit disappointing to kind of not really see him unload a lot at all. But I thought that Su Young Yu did just kind of showcase what he's good at. At 135 pounds, I think he is still just a little bit one-dimensional, but he's a fun fighter, and I think that kind of given his skill set and his pretty solid top control, there are a lot of bantamweights out there that I think he can give some pretty big problems to. Zhang Mingyang knocked out Ozzy Diaz. This is kind of to the point where I really was half asleep, I'll be honest. But I did pick Zhang Mingyang to win by KO in round 1. But I did think that if the fight left round 1, it was going to get interesting because that's how Ozzy Diaz fights. But the way that Aussie GS fights at the end of the day really is just kind of beating up on people that have gotten tired from either trying to take him down or by just trying to knock him out. And in this case, he just got knocked out before Aussie Diaz could really start to take over. It was a good win for Zhang Mingyang. I would like to see him take a bit of a step up in competition now. I do understand that he just overall has not fought the best guys whatsoever, because prior to the UFC was beating up on a lot of guys that weren't that great. He did beat Tuko Tokos, which at the time was a great win, and he beat Benson Ribeiro and Aussie Diaz. I'd like to see him take another step up in competition. I'm not really too sure who that would be just off the top of my head, but I do think that there are quite a few pretty fun options out there. Maybe someone like Marcin Prachnio or something, but I think that Prachnio has a fight booked, so maybe Modestas Pekauskas if he's still in the promotion. Something like that would be quite fun to watch, I think. And now Carlos Ulberg, he did defeat Volkan Oezdemir. 230-27 scorecards, 129-28 scorecard. Oezdemir, I guess, just started to wrestle quite a bit. And towards the end of the fight, we kind of had to see Ulberg showcase his takedown defense. And although his takedown defense looked really good, it was against Volkan Oezdemir, who just isn't really a guy that does shoot takedowns all that often. And overall, I did think that in this fight, Ulberg, on the feet, it was very competitive, but it did seem like Ulberg was just a little bit faster, and he kind of had the better reactions. I was noticing a lot of moments where Oezdemir would leave himself open, and Ulberg would just kind of, almost out of instinct, just throw something, like throw a right hand, throw a left hook as well, and Oezdemir would get caught on occasion by moments like that, and then even then on the inside. This is something that Oezdemir is typically really good at. Ulberg was throwing very heavy boxing hook combinations whenever the fight got pretty close, and he was beating Oezdemir to the punch there. But I will say that it was very competitive on the feet. But towards the end of the fight, Oezdemir started to wrestle a lot more. I guess kind of getting a little bit desperate. Maybe he thought that he was behind. I know that the two judges gave it 30-27, but I don't know. You could maybe give Oezdemir, is it Oezdemir round one? You could maybe give it two, but I thought that Ulberg did kind of rock Oezdemir as well a little bit in round one. As I said, it was very competitive on the feet, but Ulberg I did think ultimately did win. I don't really plan on doing matchmaking in this video, but I did think that maybe with Ulberg he could fight someone like Khalil Roundtree would be fun. I know Roundtree's probably going to have to take a lot of time off, or actually, this is probably a better option. Nikita Krylov had his fight cancelled recently, and he needs an opponent. So I think maybe we just do Carlos Ulberg versus Nikita Krylov. I think Ulberg versus Krylov in Australia could be pretty fun. I think maybe Krylov wants to fight pretty soon, but Ulberg versus Krylov in Australia, that's only in 3 months, so it's not really too long to wait for my GOAT, Nikita Krylov. Now, Gabriela Fernandez upset Wang Tiong. This is depressing. really depressing. Wang Tiong, a lot of people had hype on her. I had hype on her. I believed in her quite a lot, and I really liked what we were seeing out of her in general, because she had beaten Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing before. She was on the Alex Pereira comeback arc. I'm trying to shake down Shevchenko in MMA. And in this fight, she was looking good. I thought she won the first round pretty clearly. She was winning the second round pretty clearly, but I will say in general, as soon as that second round started, I was watching the replay, I knew what the result was. She come out a lot more aggressive, and she left herself a lot more open. She was kind of getting desperate. She wanted the KO so bad, she was almost risking the chance of her getting hurt for it to happen, if that makes any sense. And eventually that is what happened. Hernandez hit her with a head kick, and Wang Tiong just started bombing away on the feet, just throwing hooks instead of retreating, giving yourself a few moments to recover, kind of think about things for a little bit. She just charged forward like an idiot, and Fernandez just threw a couple hooks of her own, and one of them connected, dropped Wang Tiong, and then she choked her out. Wang Tiong just wasn't really there to tap, I don't think. So yeah, Fernandez won. Huge upset, huge win for Fernandez. She got that bonus as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't really have too much more to say aside from that, because it would just be me being pretty sad about Wang Tiong losing, because I was very high on Wang Tiong. I believed in Wang Tiong. I was even telling the someone at the UFC Shanghai Performance Institute how good I think that she can be when she fought on the road to UFC. So Yeah, this is like sad. It's really sad. But I think Wang Chong could be back. She's pretty old for like a woman's prospect at 115 pounds because she did have a kickboxing career many years ago. But she's 32. I think she can still come back from this. It just kind of is going to be a big setback and a big win for Fernandez. Muslim Salikov to defeat Song Kian in another fight, which honestly could be a knockout of the year contender. You don't typically see spinning wheel kick KOs like that, and if he just did the spinning wheel kick KO and then walked off and walked away, probably would be the KO of the year. I know that there are some other insane ones out there as well, but you don't see spinning wheel kick KOs. Prior to that, though, the fight kind of was going how I thought it was going to. Salikov, despite being older, was just faster. Song Kanan just has no speed left at all. The fight against Ricky Glenn told me that, and Salikov just in general was beating him to the punch, was landing faster, and I thought that overall Salikov was looking like the faster fighter. Sorry guys, I'm trying to sort something out with my computer. Anyway, Salikov got the spinning wheel kick KO. It was massive. We can now move on to Yan Xiaonan, who defeated Tabitha Ricci. I don't think Tabitha Ricci come into this fight with a game plan. And I'm very glad that I picked Yan Xiaonan, because there were quite a few people out there picking Tabitha Ricci, and I do understand why, because we've seen Yan Xiaonan absolutely dominated on the ground before, multiple times. But Ricci just had nothing. No game plan, nothing. In the first rounds, Tabitha Ricci was credited with landing 0 strikes on Yan Xiaonan. 0. And I watched it, and she just walked backwards for the whole round. Just took the whole round off, didn't do anything, accepted defeat. And oh my goodness, she just chose to lose. I don't even know. I picked Yan Xiaonan. I'm happy that Yan Xiaonan won. I thought she had a pretty decent performance overall, considering that she was taking on a dangerous grappler. But one thing about Ricci as well is I feel like now more than ever, the size difference has been showcased too, because Ricci, she is tiny for 115 pounds, and she looks tiny against Yan Xiaonan in that matchup. And I thought that Yan Xiaonan just looked a lot bigger, was able to use her length quite well to box from range, and that was just the performance. That was the fight, really, overall. Now we can move up to the main event, Piotr Jan versus Davison Figueiredo. I thought this was pretty fun. Piotr Jan had a pretty good performance. I think most of the judges, if not all of them, gave Piotr Jan a 50-45, but I think it's round 4 out of all of the rounds that you could give Figgy, because he did have the big moment with the knockdown there, even though it wasn't credited as a knockdown, but it is what it is. I thought it was a good performance for Jan. Figgy, I thought, came out with a pretty smart game plan. He did shoot 8 takedowns here, and I do think if you want to beat Jan, you probably do need to mix in a pretty considerable amount of wrestling, because he just is so good at boxing. But in the first round, I also really liked Figgy's aggressiveness, because Jan typically is quite well known for taking the first round off, or taking the first 3 minutes off at least. And Figgy just started the round just shooting for takedowns, and he got it. Because Jan, I guess, maybe didn't expect it. Jan was still kind of trying to just kind of work his way into the fight. And I kind of was like, oh, okay, this is a pretty good start for Figgy here. Once again, I was watching on replay. I did know the result, but yeah, Figgy got that takedown, and then after that, he didn't really get any more. He attempted takedowns, but he didn't necessarily get them. He attempted 8 takedowns, got 2 of them. And Jan, for the most part, was landing more shots overall. It kind of seemed like going into the later rounds that Jan was really starting to take over, and then Figgy in that 4th round really started to have his big moments, but then Jan took over again. Overall, just a good performance for Jan. Don't really know if there's too many talking points about this fight necessarily, because it did go, I guess, as a lot of people did expect it to go. Jan, for the most part, defending takedowns on occasion, and then landing better shots with his boxing on the feet. Figgy had his moments, but one thing I will say as well about Figgy, especially early on in the fight as well, it looked like Figgy was just not really willing to just pull the trigger and just go for it. So I thought that was an interesting sort of talking point there from that matchup. But yeah, Figgy ended up losing to Piotr Jan here by decision. Jan, I don't really know what we do with him right now. He's fought 2 times recently. He's won 2 times recently. You look at the rankings, there's no obvious answer at all, because he's ranked 3. He just beat Figgy. He just beat Song Yadong. Do you do Piotr Jan versus Sean O'Malley rematch in a main event somewhere? Or do you do Piotr Jan versus Umar Nurmagomedov if they're going to do O'Malley versus Marab rematch? Who knows? There's a lot of options out there for Jan. I thought it was a good performance. Let me know what you think in the comments below.